Welcome to this week's CybHER Conversation brought to you by Peraton. My name is Audrey Murphy, and on behalf of Peraton, we are so proud to partner with CybHER to bring you these weekly conversations. For those of you who are joining for the first time today, CybHER is a program that's run out of Dakota State University in Madison, South Dakota, and they work to motivate, empower, and educate young women in cybersecurity. Just as a reminder, if you need to ask a question during the program, you can use the Q&A on the bottom of your screen. So now I'm honored to introduce today's speaker, Charlene Goldfield. Charlene is an attorney advisor with the Federal Communications Commission working on supply chain and national security issues. She also serves as a liaison for the American Bar Association Cybersecurity Legal Task Force. And previously, she worked at the Department of Justice for the Office of Information Policy. She also teaches graduate level courses at Florida International University, including one on administrative law policy and emerging technologies. And we were just speaking earlier that she's actually going back to get her LLM, which is a master's in law. So we're really excited, Charlene, to have you here today. Look forward to hearing your story, and thank you again for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I think this is such a great opportunity for young women to get introduced to the field of cyber. Excuse me. And so to get started, and we were actually talking about this before, I had no idea what cybersecurity was when I was in school or college. I came upon cybersecurity when I was taking law classes and I was almost done, and I interned at Facebook. And I thought Facebook was just the app that you go on and you make friends and you put your pictures, right? Because I was in college when Facebook was created, so I didn't grow up with the app. And so I was exposed to a lot of the work that they do there, and I realized this is something that I can do with my law degree. And so I kept exploring it, and then eventually it led me to be very interested in national security and cyber, because they both do have a lot of intersection with each other. So I think that this is great that there are programs like this, and now there's other organizations out there that are promoting cybersecurity, especially for younger ages, because I think that this field is going to be very revolutionary, and it's the future. And I think that the more women we have, the more minorities that we have in this field, the better, because I think that we need to have a more diverse voice and a more bigger representation in the field. And so just to go a little bit more into my background and my personal information is that I grew up in Miami, Florida, and I am the first generation to go to college, to go to law school, and even get a master's. I was just saying that I have been in school for a very long time because I do love school. I love reading, I love writing. So I was the type of person that wasn't sure exactly what they wanted to do because I loved everything. At first I was pre-med, and then I wanted to be a teacher, and then I wanted to do music. So there was just a lot of things that I was interested in. But I did eventually realize that I wanted to go to law school. But before that, I got my journalism degree and started doing some writing. And I worked for Miami Herald for a little bit during my college years. And then eventually, I realized that law school was going to be in the horizon when I saved up a little bit of money. And so I moved out of Miami, Florida, and came to DC because I just loved DC. And I did one internship here, and I was able to do that one internship because at the time internships were mostly unpaid, and that was not something that I could do or afford. And so I was able to scrounge up the little money I could, and I got up here in DC, and I was able to intern for a small paper. And then I realized that one day I would be back. I don't know what I would be doing, but I'd be back. And so fast forward, I went to law school, and I attended first Baltimore, which is University of Baltimore Law School, and then I transferred over to American University in Washington, DC. And law school was definitely interesting because when I went, I had just been out of school for a little bit only. And so law school is a very different experience. It's a lot of reading, a lot of thinking in a different way. And it was definitely it was hard and it was difficult, especially for someone who had never been exposed to that area. of schooling. And a lot of my peers were mostly coming from second generation homes where their parents may have been lawyers or their uncles, aunts. So they had, you know, sort of like that advanced type of knowledge in the field. And so eventually I made it through and I was able to graduate with honors, and I did the law journal and everything like that. But I just didn't know what I wanted to do because I loved a little bit of everything. Eventually, as I said, I got exposed to cybersecurity through my internships at Facebook during law school. And so I said, okay, I think I have to find a way to get to this field, right? And so I clerked, which means that I was able to work for a judge after law school. And so I was able to get a little bit more training there. And then after that, I landed a job at the Department of Justice, hoping that I would one day be able to work in their national and cyber area. And eventually I just transferred over to the Federal Communications Commission because they actually gave me the opportunity to work in this field. And I actually was working on some cool stuff related to like supply chain, meaning just telecommunications products, and you know, things that get your networks up and running, like internet, cables, etc. And just making sure that we're protecting our networks and the internet that you receive is not being exploited in some way by any foreign agents, or you know, just being protected in some way, shape, or form. And so I've been able to do a lot of those orders that we do, and whatever the Congress tells us to do, we do it through our administrative law. So it's really interesting because when people think of cyber, they think about the cool stuff that is the technology side of it, the engineering and the testing and the finding exploits and malware and things like that. But there's also the law side to it, which is really cool. And a lot of people, you know, tend to forget the law side of it. And eventually it all merges and we all work together with engineers and we work with technologists to make sure that not only is the products that are being put out there good and reliable, but that they're following the laws that are being put out there. If you've heard like privacy laws and things like that, that all has to do with cybersecurity. So here I am now working at the Federal Communications Commission. And I actually just started with the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. So I'll be doing a lot more cybersecurity work, which is really cool. So that's my story.
Thank you so much for being a guest. We're so thrilled.
Yeah.
I don't think we've had someone working in law, in cyber law before. Maybe I'm mistaken, but this is very exciting to me. You know, I never really gave any thought to the people behind the scenes, the people who are developing these laws, making sure all the policies and everything are current or are good for everyone. I never really gave it any thought until about like 2 years ago when someone was talking to me, an undergrad student, I think, about a career in cyber law. And I'm like, hey, you know what? That sounds really interesting, because I never really thought about it. I just figured there was something going on. People just get together and form these, but I never gave it any thought about what goes on. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, and just a caveat that I tell people when they're interested in possibly going to law school, I think that's great. And I think more women and definitely more minorities need to go to law school. Like I'm talking about all types of minority groups, transgender, abilities, etc. We definitely need representation in all those areas, especially now with COVID and all issues surrounding COVID and, you know, just in general. We definitely need more people in these fields. Now, when I say law school, I always give the caveat that definitely think about it because it's expensive too. And I always, when I talk to people, I say, you know, if you definitely want to practice and you definitely want to be able to sign your name with Esquire, definitely go to law school and, you know, invest in it because it's been a great investment for me. I need to have the degree because in order to practice, you need the license. But some areas of cyber, like policy and things like that, you don't need the law degree. But some people do it because they still are able to use their mind in a different way, because it definitely does train you. But I always tell people to think carefully before accruing debt, because, you know, right now there's scholarships out there and there's definitely resources and I can definitely pinpoint you to the right directions. But sometimes there's always a little bit of cost that goes with it, but it depends on, the outcome. And for me, it was worth it. I thought it was worth it. So that's always what I say with law school.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
One of the questions we have for you is, what is different about working in cyber law than other law areas? Is there a lot of difference or?
Yeah, I don't think there is a lot of a difference. And I think it's more of a partnership. So I think that it's definitely becoming more and more apparent. I can only speak in the government side. Obviously, with private side, I am involved with a lot of other practitioners in the area that are the American Bar Association. They do the private side. But you're seeing a lot more collaboration between engineers, technologists, and lawyers, because the lawyers see one side of it, right? And then those designing the products or designing the network see another side to it, right? And there's also a lot of courses out there now being given for free, or what we call CLE credits for attorneys. For certain states require you to keep going with some training. And so you'll see things like technology for lawyers, or there's one that I took during the time that I had with the pandemic. There was one that was intro to coding for lawyers, or things like that. And so I think that those more resources are out there so that lawyers can think and help when they're getting into the discussions with how these products work when they're working together with technologists and engineers. But I will say that yes, there can be some difference in the fact that you do have to think about what are the upcoming policies and laws, and how does it affect the products and where you're working at. For the government side, we definitely are always, and especially work for an agency, you're always at the behest of Congress, right? If Congress writes a law and it directs the agency to do one thing, then we have to definitely execute that and execute it properly through administrative law procedures. So that's another big part of it. So it's definitely learning a little bit of different things at the end of the day.
Cool. So I have a follow-up to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you're working in, I want to say, cyber law, do you see that you have a different perspective on certain things when compared to when you were in law school about a few things, I guess?
Like related to cyber, or?
Yeah, like when you were in law school, did you ever have like a class or more, I want to say, did you have a more in-depth understanding of what goes on in cyber when compared to the knowledge that you now have?
Right. Yeah. So in law school, I did not, right? And this is why I am doing an LLM in national security and cybersecurity, because it definitely has helped me hone in more on those topics. And when I went to law school and graduated in 2016, this type of law was still developing. And so a lot of courses that were offered weren't necessarily bigger array of classes. Like now you have so many different classes that you can take in this area. The only things that we had were probably like information privacy or national security. And I chose to take national security, right? But it didn't have like that intersection with technology. And so now you're seeing a lot more of that. So at least like for when I was in law school, like I didn't have as many more courses. And then so I decided to think about whether I wanted to continue. I'm not sure I understand. So then I decided to continue expanding and going to do my LLM courses in that. And so now I've been able to get more of an understanding of it. And so, but yeah, I honestly, like before I went and interned for Facebook, I had no idea what cyber was. I didn't even know how data packets worked, right? Like I just thought you click on your computer, it turns on and it magically appears all this information and you connect to the internet, right? So when I found out how it really actually works, I was like, wow, this is so much bigger than what people can imagine. So I think that definitely there's more opportunities out there and it's really exciting.
So you serve as the Young Lawyers Division Liaison for the American Bar Association's Cybersecurity Legal Task Force. That's a lot of words.
Yes.
So what exactly does that entail? I mean, what kind of responsibilities do you have?
Yeah, so it's a volunteer-based position. It's all part of the bigger American Bar Association, which is made up of a lot of lawyers, and not just necessarily only lawyers. There's also policymakers etc. And they have different sections and different types of laws that they look at to do events and to focus on and to like help produce policy and changes in the law. They even publish the ethics rules that a lot of lawyers have to abide by. And so in the Cybersecurity Legal Task Force, I was able to be nominated to serve as the Young Lawyers Division Liaison, which means that I represent the whole entire section of the Young Lawyers Division in cybersecurity. And so what we try to do with the legal task force is sort of be like some kind of thinking board or sounding board for the entire bar association when it comes up with cybersecurity issues that may face. Because at the end of the day, American Bar Association tries to make sure that we're affecting law properly and that we're being like the voice that represents all lawyers across the country. And so when it comes up that some cybersecurity issues may be up, you know, and being discussed by either certain states or legislation, then Cybersecurity Task Force tries to help and assist how American Bar Association should respond to that. And so right now, like for example, as far as like for the Young Lawyers Division, I'll try to like host some events that help young lawyers that may not necessarily be more informed in this area or that are trying to break into this area, have no idea where to start, right? And so we'll do like webinars, we'll do events, networking, things like that. And so that's what I try to do as the liaison for that group. And there's other attorneys that represent other groups for the American Bar Association. So it's all voluntarily based, and I've been involved with it because I knew that I kind of wanted to get more experience and get to learn from other attorneys that are in this area that have been doing it for many, many years.
That is amazing. So it's kind of like easing them into the field.
Correct, yeah, or providing some sort of knowledge and source.
Okay, that is awesome.
Yeah.
So you've also worked on the Freedom of Information Act appeal cases that focus on privacy and law enforcement information. Are you able to elaborate about that, or is it strictly hush-hush?
No, it's not strictly hush-hush. Everyone that doesn't know, FOIA is Freedom of Information Act, which means that you can ask the government, make a request to the government on information, right? And so depending on what the statute says, the government can either release it or they'll say we can't release it because of certain protections and things like that. So, you know, when I did that kind of work, I was definitely representing the Department of Justice because each agency has, you know, their own FOIA offices. And so I was just helping out and make sure that the request people made to the Department of Justice was adequately addressed. And if they said, well, you know, I don't understand why I didn't get this information, you know, we were like the sounding board for them, because at the end of the day, the whole purpose of the act is to create a fairness system for our citizens to be informed. And so when it comes to privacy and law enforcement, you know, there's always that battle between providing the most information. At the same time, there's certain things that we need to protect for privacy purposes versus, you know, either for the individual, for the interests that are involved, cases that might be going on. And so we needed to make sure that we were providing appropriate balancing tests to make sure that we're providing the most information that we can while also protecting those interests. You're muted.
I just realized that.
It happens. It's okay.
So as an attorney advisor with the Federal Communications Commission, what does your day-to-day look like? Like, do you have a set of activities that you do every day, or does your schedule change from day to day?
It definitely changes from day to day. Sometimes there's slow days. Sometimes there's like lots of crazy days. Sometimes it's a lot of writing days, and majority of it is writing days, right? Just writing a lot of orders or writing sections that you need to, things like that. So it all depends. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of communication with your team members and just making sure that you are producing things for the commission on a timely basis. So a lot of deadlines, especially if Congress gives deadlines to the commission to release certain things, or if, you know, the commissioners have certain deadlines as well. So it just depends on the day and what the project you're working on. A lot of projects are very long-term based because it requires a lot of writing and drafting.
So has COVID impacted your like job and in a big way?
Yeah, I actually started in the commission right as the pandemic hit. So it's definitely been interesting. I haven't been able to set foot in my office. I met people virtually. And so it's definitely been interesting because I'm a very, extroverted person. I love to talk to people if I have questions and like to pop in people's offices. Law is like a very big dialogue. And so it's kind of hard sometimes. And especially because a lot of us have different like demands, like personal schooling, like kids, etc. So we definitely have a lot of schedules to work around. So it's been very interesting. But at the end of the day, we've gotten more work done than we have before. And I think that's because there's also a productivity plus to it, right? You're at home, so you're just like plugging away, without taking any breaks, which you should. I know I'm very bad at that. But it's definitely been very interesting. So hopefully with, as time goes by, we'll definitely be able to one day go back into the office and see each other again and be able to talk with each other in person.
I kind of miss that as well. And I usually consider myself an introvert, but over the last year, I've realized I like to talk to people more than I thought I did.
Yeah.
And it's not a very good situation, but hopefully, like you said, we may get to do that soon. So
yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So what is the best thing that you've gotten to do with your work, like so far?
I think it's definitely a lot of different things because I also am able to do pro bono work as a federal government attorney, as long as it's approved and things like that. So I was able to have the opportunity to help besides cybersecurity. This is not related to cyber anyway. This is just helping the community. So that's definitely a really big plus that, the government definitely promotes. And so I've been able to do that as a lawyer because I always think at the end of the day, you're a lawyer for a reason. It's to help people. But as far as like my cyber work, I think it's been really cool and very interesting to be able to be a voice for protecting our networks, especially because we've been relying so much on the internet and we just need to be connected. And so I think that's been really interesting. And also I was able to help with COVID-19 telehealth funding. So a lot of my work when I started at the commission was just helping to get that rolling and sort of help applications for rural areas or hospitals or institutions that were eligible receive funding. And so that was really cool that I was able to provide that kind of like direct help once I started at the commission, because sometimes you do this work and you're just like, well, I don't know where my help goes, right? Like it's just such a big, expansive environment. But in that area, I was able to kind of help people directly. So that was really cool.
So it was more like, yeah, like you said, a direct impact where you can quantify that's amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So then do you have to be in DC to have a job like yours then?
Definitely to work in the federal government agencies, as far as positions that are based in DC, yes, you do. But there's agencies everywhere. There's like DOJ offices in Texas, for example. There's some in Florida, actually, but it depends on which agency or which department you're working for. But yes, most of them are here in DC. And sometimes I've noticed in the commission, there'll be some people that work telework, and this was before the pandemic. They'll live somewhere else, but the office is based here in DC. But that's an arrangement that you've made with the company or with the agency. And so it usually gets approved, but most of the time you do have to be in DC.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you could write one law, just one, to help with cybersecurity, what would it be, or what would you base it on? Is there an area within cybersecurity that you would base that law on?
Right. Very good question. So I think that, I don't know if it would be a law specifically, but I have been writing a lot about data transfers and national security issues, and sort of, like how we collaborate with our allies and other countries. And, we all have privacy. We view it differently in all different countries. And so I think that what I would do is try to work a little bit more in detail in that area. And I've actually wrote some papers on it for classes. And so I think that I would definitely focus on that and how to better improve our privacy outlook so that we can better assist when it comes to real national security issues. And then also reform those national security efforts to make sure that we are being as definitely as detailed as we need to be, rather than expansive as not needed.
Very cool. Privacy is so big right now, as it should have been for a long time, but I'm glad just that it's been in the focus for now.
Yeah,
so.
No, absolutely, it's needed.
So if, say a young student is interested in coming into cyber law, but they're not sure if it's the right path for them, do you know of any resources or anything that could help them realize maybe this is the correct fit for them?
Oh, absolutely. So I actually just came across today an organization called Girl Security, which does a lot of cyber and national security issues, or just cyber in general. And so they're doing some writing contests or some, I think it's like more like, hey, come write an article about anything that you think you're interested in, right? And I think that's really cool, and it exposes younger women to this area. And so I think that doing things like that, like just writing about anything you want, could maybe spark an interest and see if it's for you. So I think that just seeing what's out there, organizations like that, if you just Google cybersecurity and young women, a lot of organizations will pop up, and they have so many resources out there like this one. Just going ahead and just being exposed and reading to things, and seeing webinars. I know you guys do a lot of YouTube videos about certain areas of cybersecurity. Just seeing those things can definitely make you realize whether this is something you like to do or not. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of free courses also. Some of them are usually tailored for college level, but I feel like, anyone can just go on there and just look at it, right? If you're in high school, I'm pretty sure everyone in here is going to be super smart to realize like, hey, I can understand this and do this perfectly well. And so you can definitely be exposed to those type of coding classes, or just anything that's intro to something in this area, I think would definitely help. And it's free, right? It doesn't hurt to just go on there if you have some time. Reading books about it is definitely really interesting. Also, there's also a lot of good reading lists out there on this area, and you can definitely check them out in the library, or purchase them on Amazon or anywhere, and just check them out and read them and see if it's something that you like and that you're focused on, and it's something that you could eventually see yourself in. But at the end of the day, I think that you definitely have to experience some part of it before you definitely should say, nope, not for me. Because again, I didn't even know it existed, and I thought that's definitely not for me when I read about it, and then here I am, right? So I think you should definitely just look at all the resources that are available to you.
Our last question to you is, if you could give one piece of advice to all the young people that are watching this session right now, what would it be?
Ooh, I definitely would say that there's never be afraid if someone says no, or if you think they'll say no. Because if they say no, they say no, right? You should always just try and do it. Just do it. Don't be scared. Whether it's applying somewhere, or trying out for something, or doing a writing competition for this area, anything like that. So I think that you should definitely look at that. I also would say that don't feel like you don't fit in to a certain area or field. Like I always sometimes think I have imposter syndrome, if everyone's ever heard of that term, meaning like you feel like you don't fit in, especially when I started teaching some courses. I was like, who's going to listen to me? I don't know anything. I'm just, I'm the first one to go to law school in my family. What do I know, right? And so I think that you definitely have to like get those little voices out of your head, because everyone has something to say, and everyone has something interesting to give to this world and to this area, definitely, for sure.
Those are such valuable words that you shared there. And I think that pretty much states the mission of cybersecurity or of CybHER in trying to get more people involved in just getting those different voices. So thank you for that. Now I am going to launch a quick poll for our attendees to fill out. But I want to thank Charlene for joining us today. I especially loved hearing that they have courses for you of technology for lawyers and coding for lawyers. I think they should have that for every career field. But I also want to remind everybody that you can find out more about CybHER programs by going to our website at cybher.org or following us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also go to our website and sign up for next week's CybHER Conversation with Tiziana DeSink, who is a channel manager at Entrust and lives in England. She works with data protection solutions. So if you've ever wanted to hear about how your data is protected, you won't want to miss next week's conversation. But we are so grateful to you, Charlene. We are grateful to Audrey and everybody at Peraton for helping sponsor these programs. We wish everybody a wonderful week and look forward to seeing you all again soon. So have a good night.